Coffee with the Editor is proudly brought to you by IRZ and the Naledi Group of companies, which includes Naledi Ring Rollers, Composite Brake Components, and Naledi Foundries. Let's start off with just talking about the Railway Development Authority and how that fits in with the Ministry of Railway, the Ministry of Transport, and the Ghana Railway Company. How does it all come together?
Thank you. To start off, the story of the Ghana railway sector has been a topsy-turvy kind of experience. But then, talk legislatively, it was then at a point known as the Ministry of Ghana Railway Corporation. All of that fitted under various governments, had various names for the sector. So at one point it was called Ministry of Transport. At the time it was called Ministry of Transport and Harbours, And then I think in 2000, this new government that came into office in January 2017 decided to change what was previously known as Ministry of Transport, under which we had railways, aviation, ports and harbours, and the metro mass road transport. All of those came under the Ministry of Transport. But then this new government decided to decouple two wings from the umbrella Ministry of Transport. And one of them is the railways. So the government created Ministry of Aviation and created a separate Ministry of Railways. Therefore, the former Ministry of Transport is now left with only ports and harbours and metro mass transport. That is the current legal structure. And where do we fit in? From this definition, the law that established my authority, called Act 779, divested all assets from the Ghana Railway Company, created the Ghana Railway Development Authority in 2008, which came into effect in 2009, and under that act, divested all assets that belong to the Ghana Railway Company and vested it in the new authority, my authority, which came into effect into being in 2009. Significantly speaking, that means all stations, all signal boxes, all tracks, any and every asset, including even rolling stock, whether it's diesel multiple units, whether it's wagons, wherever, all belong to the authority. In relation to my sister company, what was left of it after all this divestiture, Ghana Railway Company Limited, they were then named as more or less state carriers. In other words, they are the operations wing of the sector. So if there's a train running, it is provided by drivers and signalmen and whatever infrastructural workmen are required for the operation of trains are provided by the Railway Company Limited. And then it is mine that they are operating on. So whether it's freight, as in the haulage of bauxite from the mines to the port of Takoradi, or if it's a case of a passenger transit, as in the case of Accra Tema, Accra Nsawam, or Sekandi and Takoradi, they provide the drivers, they provide the station masters, they provide the PUA men, the people to undertake all sorts of maintenance and such like. Now the ministry, the relationship with the ministry is that it's no different from any other ministry. Ministries are meant to provide policy guidance. So we are no different, whether it's a new ministry or otherwise. Our ministry is supposed to provide policy guidance, and I and my other sister company are the implementing agencies. So that is in sum what it is. So in relation to Ministry of Transport, of course, we are now not part of Ministry of Transport. We are a separate Ministry of Railways Development.
Have you found that to work better? So if I had to take, for example, South Africa, where we have a Department of Transport and we have a Department of Public Enterprise and we have freight through the DPE and we have passenger through DOT, and do you think how you guys have done it is more structured?
Put it this way, other than creating the Ministry of Railways, nothing else has been touched in terms of the legal framework. In other words, the mandate as existed with the Ghana Railway Authority remains as is. So under that mandate, not only are we asset owners, we're also the regulators of the sector. Of course, in a properly functional, highly developed railway setup, it would be ideal to have a separate regulator. So going forward, that is the ideal. Going forward, that is something that will be done. But of course, it requires legislative change. It has to go through Parliament because we are a creature of Parliament, and you can't just change a parliamentary setup at will, whether minister or not. It has to go through the same body that created the authority. That body retains the power to change it or amend it or repeal it altogether. But the norm going forward, by the moment, personally, I do not think it's a critical issue because we don't have that sort of infrastructure requiring an urgent need to have a separate regulator from the developer. We are still at the scratching phase.
So it's quite interesting that rail has, for the last few years, specifically in Ghana, become quite a key economic enabler, and you guys have been very serious about developing your railways and taking your projects forward. So it's fantastic to see. So let's talk about the railway projects that have been, or in terms of rehabilitation, that have been completed.
Under the Ghana Railway Master Plan, we have 6 phases. Phase 1 is dedicated to the rehabilitation of the existing infrastructure. And the existing infrastructure is all of 947 kilometers that was bequeathed to us from the British colonial administration. Out of that, going toward the year 2015, most of it had ground to a halt. Almost 85% had ground to a halt. Now, so the master plan that came into being in the year 2013, the Ghana Rail Master Plan 2013, which is at the moment under review in view of new developments. It factored in on the phase 1 of the 6-phase master plan, the review of this existing infrastructure, which is of the narrow gauge configuration. But as a policy, going forward, all new developments will be of the standard gauge configuration. So if you look at the master plan, you will find the standard gauge mirroring the narrow gauge where the narrow gauge exists. The rationale being that although we are rehabilitating the existing narrow gauge, ultimately we will be building lines along those routes that have been served previously, but we're building lines with the standard gauge configuration, because that's the future. Then the question we ask, why are you spending good money on rehabilitation if you are mirroring it with standard gauge? Well, the answer to that is that a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. We have, we have the plan, but the plan is backed by money. We don't have that money. So therefore, the bird in hand is that we do have some locomotives that are already, doing well. We do have some few passenger trains that are all over the narrow gauge. So why don't you rehabilitate them, get them functional, and then you source money, that big money that's required for the new developments. That is a rationale. But then, of course, going beyond where we have existing lines, which is a very narrow confine of the map of Ghana, going forward and beyond that, then there is a standard gauge.
All right. So you currently have 3 existing narrow gauge lines that you have rehabilitated and are in operation.
We have the narrow gauge ones that we are currently simultaneously working on. Mm-hmm. We have the Kojo Krom going toward Kumasi, which is on the western line. It is not completed. It is still ongoing. The end point is Takwa. Okay. We haven't completed it, but it's still ongoing. In fact, we had an initial cash injection from the Ghana Manganese Company, $10 million. They have a personal interest in that because their mine is sited on that or situated on that route. Mm. And it serves them well that we have a fortified line that can, speed up their mining operations and send it directly to the port of Takoradi for export. Mm. So they give us that initial cash injection. Then the other one will be the Accra to Tema line, which was reopened about 4 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. After a derailment that happened in 2017, in October 2017. Yeah. We used that opportunity to not just retrieve the train, so and so forth, but we also kind of looked at the whole line from Accra Central, which was, overrun by these quarters and whatnot. So that derailment gave us the opportunity of actually getting rid of squatters from Accra Central all the way through to the point of derailment and then connecting through to the port of Tema. So that has been accomplished and the train service has resumed. Then we have the separate and third one, which you're referring to, which is the Accra to Nsawam line. That is still under construction. In fact, the end period was targeted for the end of February. But that has elapsed because we met some challenges in that during the period when the sector was dead, again, the issue of encroachment did happen. And not just encroachment, we had the issue of illegal winning of sand for building purposes. So back in the hinterlands on that route, land claim, sand claimers went and were digging for sand to take away. All of that kind of impacted upon the infrastructure, the rail infrastructure. So that's not just simply a matter of replacing rails or putting a brake, but that, the whole surrounding area needs some serious, infrastructural fortification.
The projects that are currently in rehabilitation that will be completed this year?
Well, yeah. If for instance, we're aiming for end of February for the Accra and Nsawam as an example, and this is only the first quarter of the year, so we can confidently say that by year's end we should have Accra and Nsawam reopened.
So, what railway projects, new lines are on the cards to start construction this year?
It all depends on the financing. Well, happily, there's a lot. We are looking at a whole mixed bag of activities. We have, like I said, a number of lines: Central Line, Central Spine, Central Line, Trans-ECOWAS, Eastern Line, Eastern Expansion, Western Line, Western Expansion. We have the Ghana Faso rail connectivity. All of these, and it's not as if, although we have 6 phases, we're not going sequentially. It's not as if we're going from 1 to 2 to 3 thereabouts. No, it's as and when you can source the funding. So, for instance, the Eastern Line, which is Accra through to Kumasi, we are very close. PricewaterhouseCoopers is the transactional advisor on that one. We started off with an initial interest of more than 45 bidders through a series of eliminations at an evaluation panel. We came down to the last count 4, and from the last count, the entity tender committee of the ministry, we would meet, evaluate them, then it goes to the central tender review body, which will approve or otherwise of what the entity tender committee of the ministry has settled on. And then the final decision will be made, that kind of thing. So we've gone pretty far with that. Remember, we are not just picking a contractor, but we're picking somebody who also is coming with resources, because the country as a whole hasn't got the funding for these undertakings. So whoever wins it is coming on 2 bases: one, your technical strength, and 2, your financial strength. Of course, we're not just taking your claims. That will do a vetting background research to ensure that yes, you do have that sustainable financial muscle, so you do not leave us, after 5 or 6 kilometers and then you are bankrupt, kind of thing.
Correct. That line is about 340 kilometers.
That's about right. Yes.
Okay. And then the construction for the central spine is expected to start before the end of this year?
Yes, because we have cited a contractor for it. That is the Chinese group CCECC. They are beneficiaries of half of the $1 billion that the ministry, that the sector has been awarded from the $2 billion Chinese Development Bank loan facility to the country. So we're giving $1 billion of it, out of which we've decided to give $500 million to the central spine and another $500 million to the western line. So the Chinese have a head start with that $500 million, which of course isn't enough for the entire line, but it is a start, and then we are looking at ways of funding the remainder.
And again, the western line, which I think we've spoken about. So I haven't seen your transport master plan. So if we can talk about just some of the projects that you highlighted in just a little more detail, which form part of the 6 phases that we haven't really discussed so far. So like I think it's called the Trans-ECOWAS line.
Well, Trans-ECOWAS line, as the name denotes, is the ambition of West African. ECOWAS stands for Economic Community of West African States. So there's this ambitious plan, political and economic integration of the economic zone, and this is to be effectualized through, among other things, rail connectivity. So it starts from the east, as in Togo, cutting through the landmass of Ghana, through to the west, Ivory Coast. That is the trajectory of that Trans-ECOWAS line. And with that as well, we have a number of interested, parties. And then again, we've retained a transactional advisor whose responsibility includes vetting the technical and financial, potential of those bidding contractors. So that is ongoing. All our real engagements in terms of interested bidders will have to go through the vetting process as undertaken by the various transactional advisors over the various lines and routes.
Additional support from a railway perspective to the mining community in Ghana. So I know you mentioned one mine. I mean, there are obviously more mines and they're quite well spread. So from an economic point of view, supporting the mining industry would be good for you.
Our role is to provide a means of transport, which is critical to the mining community. So if anything, we'd rather the mining community supported our bid because we are for their good. So on the Western line, no wonder, like I said, the initial cash injection came not from government, but came from Ghana Manganese, company, because they know that they stand to benefit in having a fortified railway line. In other words, from its dilapidated state where there were innumerable derailments in a year, nobody heard about them because they were inanimate products. If it was humans that were involved in trains that were being derailed, the world and its auntie would hear about it. So in this instance, nobody heard about it because it was an inanimate product. And of course, that caused them financial losses, it caused them delays and all the rest of them. So it stood them in good stead to assist in the master plan, which in this instance, the rehabilitation of the existing line, which in this instance served the Western line, which is where most of Ghana's mines are situated. So yeah, that is where most are situated. In fact, the only other mines of interest which will be taken into consideration under the review of the master plan are in the east. So there's a place called Kibi, where copious amounts of bauxite has recently been discovered, which is the reason why an entirely new authority has recently been set up by the president, Integrated Bauxite Authority, which encompasses the president's vision that we should be a country that exports finished products rather than you take raw material out, manufacture, refine it elsewhere and bring it back in. It's all part of that vision that this new authority has set up, where bauxite is found to be a very versatile, material that, in the refining process, different items can be obtained from it. And so we intend to retain all of that within the country. And so in the review of the master plan, we certainly are going to be factoring a railway line to serve that area. And then further east, also in the north of the country, around Yendi, there's also a mine, an iron ore mine, huge potential. So this actually tells you what informs the decision as regards where railway lines are provided for on the master plan. Not just for passenger transit, but also for effective, maximization of commercial potential.
Are there any current projects out on tender or coming up for tender that we haven't already spoken about?
None. All our lines, as I've indicated, are all under. Even before we started any tendering process, when we came into office in January 2017, on the desk, on my predecessor's desk, we had more than 350 unsolicited expressions of interest in various lines of the master plan. So
So coming up for the next 12 months, what's coming up for tender in terms of rolling stock or signaling?
There is no single answer to that. In fact, it's a developing issue, as in we take each line. So we're not going to be having a homogeneous operation. It's not like one, a policy affecting or applying everywhere else. We've, of course, had various discussions with various technology companies, including Siemens, Bombardier, and the like, as regards the supply of communication tools, signaling, etc.
Yeah.
Then there's the grappling issue of whether or not in the award of a contract it should be just the building of a line and a separate award of contracts for the building of stations. Like I said, there's no unitary, homogeneous, operation in that regard. Yeah.
All right. So I've received a couple of questions from our readers at Railways Africa, and they're obviously suppliers to the industry, and they're trying to understand how best to go about communicating with either yourselves or the Ghana Railway Company in terms of showcasing their products. Where do they get access to information such as tenders? I mean, you should surely be needing wheels or bogies or overhaul or maintenance. I mean, how's that all handled and managed?
In terms of, let's say, the maintenance of the existing rolling stock, that is dealt with directly with the operations wing of the sector, which is the Ghana Rail Company Limited. I may be in the know because I'm the asset owner. In terms of technical requirements, it's not my cup of tea.
Yes.
The sister company, they are the technical, people. We've got the mechanical engineers, they've got the workshops, and then it's for them to know what they need, and liaise directly with. So when I do get somebody or an interested bidder coming my way asking those questions, I duly refer them to the Railway Company Limited.
Well, it's been an interesting journey to watch both yourself and the ministry over the last couple of years do some great things, actually. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the rest roll out. But before you go, I wanted to know the status with your activities with Transnet.
Transnet, most of the negotiations was done with my sister company and the ministry. Right? Because the requirements for bogies, locos, and all of those things is going to be managed by the sister company. I did give the legal position to Transnet when they first came, made them understand that they cannot be signing a contract with my sister company because the law says I am the owner of the asset. You cannot be signing a contract if you do not own an asset. But there is also the issue that you can sign a lease agreement quite legitimately with the operator, which is quite legitimate. I mean, if you lease because they need it for their operations. But in terms of signing a contract to purchase and stuff like that, they don't have ownership rights, and that. So they did understand the legal tightrope that they needed to navigate to ensure they were compliant with the existing law.
Okay, and the Sky Rail project also sounds quite interesting.
Well, they are undertaking. I think they had a 6-month period to undertake the feasibility studies. So in the end, it's in their court. We are interested, but it is down to, again, at the end of their feasibility studies, if it is a bankable project for them. So it's out of our hands. We've signed the MOU with them. Come on, would want your services. Come and do the feasibility studies and decide.
Kind of looking at things like trams or light rail.
Most definitely.
High speed.
When now you're talking about urban commuting.
Yes.
And we have 2 major cities in the country, Accra and Kumasi, which are major developed in terms of population stats. Yeah. And in that regard, we are like most other, urbanized cities across the world, plagued with the issue of congestion on the roads. And so it's a no-brainer that you need light railway or metro railway system to at least complement the road vehicular transport and and that kind of thing. So surely we have it on the books, not just on the books. Actually, we are almost down to a selected. Now, SkyTrain, as you talked about, is one such inner city transport alternative.
Yes.
So yes, for Kumasi, tomorrow we're doing Kumasi to look at the siting of the routing to supply the metro system, light railway system for Kumasi, the second largest city of the country. So yes, we are not just, we don't just have it on the books. We are actually actively, pursuing to deliver that as well.
That's quite exciting. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
Ghana is an oasis of peace. It's a place where, under the best place to do business, I think we rank quite highly, both globally and within the African continent and within the subcontinent. We are certainly a place that is catching the attention of the international community, especially under this new administration with this president Nana Akufo-Addo, that a man of vision, and you can see the policies. This is not a political talk at all. The policies speak for themselves, and the interest of the international community speaks for itself, because they come and they can see that it's not political talk, but actually that things that can be actualized. This is the man who stood before the president of France and told him to his face that please keep your hand out, and I'm sure the French will appreciate you keeping the hand out for themselves. We try to to be self-sufficient here, and we have the means to be self-sufficient. It's just a matter of discipline and following lay down policies. So we call Africa beyond aid. We want to go beyond that aid syndrome, and assume our rightful place as the world's most endowed continent. Which with correct leadership should be able to really live beyond aid. So yes, the readership, your readership, should just look at all these little stats from the IMF and all the rest and say, yes, indeed, your money will find safe haven, for investment here, and the laws in the country are pretty good. The Ghana Investment Promotion Center is case in point, where if you look at its website, it'll tell you how you can even repatriate your profits safely. We are a rule of law country. A typical example is that we have what is known popularly as the judgment debt. Now, judgment debt is where our own courts, hold judgment against state institutions and even the government itself in the interest of maybe if a foreigner. If your case is proven, we don't run a state monopoly of things and say no, even the laws will back the state regardless. No. So, and there are ample cases that back this, that if foreigners and foreign investments are safe under our legal regime. Yeah. So not only is the climate good for investment, but if things go down south, that you will have the legal protection if your case is proven.
Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have spent some time with you, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Sure thing. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.